Chapter 866, Influx 1/5. To resurrect the Ghostbusters. No, more than that, to become the ruler of that place. That might interest me. In truth, the second part mattered little to me. Just the thought that the community could be restored made my heart race without me even realizing it. And it's no wonder. Since Oral Gavis unilaterally shut down the server, how much has it been missed? There's a kind of stress that only dissipates with modern and constant conversations, and without that, I felt suffocated. Like being forced to quit smoking. Of course, I have Sven Periv, the former evil spirit, in the category of real acquaintances, but revealing my evil identity for such a reason would be absurd. And he's saying he can bring her back. This is something I need to do at all costs. More than just relieving stress, if I restore that, I could communicate with my colleagues who should be on the first basement, through Sven Periv. Bah dumb. Just imagining it made my heart feel like it was about to leap out of my chest, but I tried to contain my excitement and keep a neutral face. After all, a poker face is essential in any negotiation. If it really isn't very useful to you, I could take it and study it a bit. Don't even think about it. Ellipsis question mark. What? Did he think he could get this for free? Acting like it was nothing was pointless, his eyes were already brimming with despair. Without beating around the bush, I simply stated my conditions. Join the Anabata clan. Promise to accompany me to the first subterranean level. Full authority and complete sharing of research results on spiritual space. What? If you accept these conditions, I will deliver. Ah, and I'm warning you now. There's no other option. I maintained an inflexible stance, closing any room for bargaining. The rest depended on the GM. I accept. I managed to recruit an orange-clad, wizarding CEO. After concluding the recruitment issue, we moved on to the next topic. Actually, I was just as curious about that as I was about the jewel. So that siren, what was it all about? Right after I stole the jewel, the alarm went off everywhere. Was that really a coincidence? Oh, that's right, that happened. As if he had completely forgotten, the GM realized what was happening and began to explain about yesterday's alarm. To get straight to the point, it seems the alarm really did go off because we found this item. What does it seem like? So it's not a conclusion, but rather a guess. I frowned as I interrupted him, but he seemed used to this sort of thing and remained unresponsive. When I arrived at the Magic Tower, there were only a few masters of the schools. Oh, and a Knight of the Order of the Rose. Only a few, yes. When I arrived, it was already late. The forces that had gathered early had already left, and we were left waiting to decide whether or not to provide support. Hearing the rest, it seemed the masters were all confused, not understanding what was happening, and the Knight of the Order of the Rose who remained also offered no explanation. So they stayed there, knowing nothing, waiting for hours. Shortly before dawn, the Master of the Tower and the Knight of the Order of the Rose returned. Their faces were tense, as if they were treading on eggshells before royalty. It was clear that something had gone wrong. And then, the order to assemble troops was cancelled shortly afterward. And when I discreetly asked one of the masters I know, he said they had gone to the sewers. What? To the sewers? At this point, it was no longer speculation, it was practically a fact. There aren't enough coincidences to connect all of this. Then why did you speak like that? A way of speaking, let's say. Get rid of that. That way of speaking won't help you in life at all. Ellipsis. It was sincere advice, but he still showed no reaction. So, we moved on to the next topic. But, where exactly did you get those coordinates? No matter how I look at it, it seems like the Magic Tower and the royal family were conspiring to hide them. How far should I tell the story? After thinking for a moment, I quickly decided. Now we're in the same boat. So I revealed pretty much everything that had happened in the labyrinth. To be honest, I also wanted to vent and ask someone for their opinion. Go to the coordinates I'm giving you now. I'm going to hide something that might be useful to you. And the object really exists. And that made everything even more confusing. Wasn't the Arta I knew an NPC? Perhaps that was indeed the case. After all, no hidden piece of the labyrinth had ever been able to affect the outside world, only the world inside the labyrinth. So, let's see if I understood correctly. After hearing the whole story, the GM had a strange expression on his face. Are you saying that someone named Arta, whom you met inside the labyrinth, gave you those coordinates? And that he hid something there to help you? That's right. And, as I said before, he claimed to have come from the past. The GM seemed to be trying to decide if I was serious or not. Understandably, it was a tough story to swallow. But perhaps he sensed that I wasn't joking. If what you're saying is true, Lord Viscount, it would be one of two cases. After reflecting for a while, he finally spoke. 2. Yes. First, Arta would have actually used an ancient magical artifact to travel from the past to beyond the dimension of the labyrinth. I had already considered that. If there are evil spirits from other dimensions, it wouldn't be impossible for someone to come directly to the labyrinth from another timeline. Although it seemed unlikely, And the second one, a phenomenon caused by the very nature of the labyrinth. Explain it simply. You've personally been beyond the city walls. Out there, the world is almost identical to the labyrinth, full of similar monsters and landscapes. Ah, now I knew where he was going with this. The labyrinth was clearly created to mimic reality. And that includes the Arta that you found. He was talking about the original Arta. Perhaps this sounds complicated, so I'll explain it better. In the real story, Arta managed to travel through time and found future A. To help him, he buried a treasure deep in the earth, even before the magic tower existed. But A, for some reason, never managed to find it. Ellipsis. The labyrinth recreated this event based on the original story, and you relived this story in the role of A. The explanation was kind, but it didn't offer the new information I was hoping for. I had also thought about that and, in fact, considered it the most likely hypothesis. The hidden secrets of the labyrinth always had an original inspiration. There was only one point that didn't fit. So, what about the royalty? And the magic tower? They already knew there was something buried there, didn't they? Well, I don't know. But there's certainly some secret or conspiracy we're unaware of. Perhaps they simply didn't know the exact location. What a joke. 1 minute he was saying the treasure might be something secretly guarded by them, and now he comes up with this. I opened everything and asked for an opinion and got nothing in return. Tisk. In the end, it seemed like I would have to figure it out on my own. Deep down, I had expected it, but reviving the community using the jewel was taking much longer than we imagined. Even after handing over the jewel so he could study it at his leisure, there was still no significant progress. However, it wasn't entirely fruitless. From now on, I will call this jewel the Fragment of Origin. He gave it a name. And not just any name. Fragment of the Origin. Does it have anything to do with the power of origin? After exploring Arta's secret base, it was hard to believe it was just a catchy name. I insisted he explain the reason for that name, and after hesitating a bit, he finally spilled the beans. Someone I know used that name to refer to something very similar. Who? Oral Gavis, a great magician, little known to the general public. Okay, that old man. Well, the original owner of the community was that old man, after all. The GM was managing it with authority granted by that old man, and for some reason, that old man had unilaterally deactivated the community server. Fragment of the Origin. That got me thinking. Judging by the name, Fragment, it probably wasn't complete. If we gathered all the fragments, we would form the power of origin and perhaps it would be possible to create a new labyrinth or something like that. Impossible to know yet, but if we continue studying, maybe we'll discover something. For now, I've left that question aside. Swish. I slowly raised my head upwards. More precisely, towards the black tower that rose so high it seemed to touch the sky. Wow, it's really tilting. If you can see it so clearly even up close, isn't that dangerous, Naya? The magic tower, which had always stood motionless in the same place, was now slightly tilted, like that famous European tower. Probably a consequence of the collapse of the underground tunnel. Of course, since people were completely unaware of this fact, the incident of the leaning magic tower became a major topic of conversation, and thanks to this, it is said that the number of tourists increased, revitalizing the surrounding businesses. Wow, by the way, there are so many people. Can't you get a little bigger, Naya? That way I can climb on your shoulder. You think that's possible? I laughed and ruffled Misha's hair. The Magic Tower Plaza was completely packed. But they weren't just there to see the leaning tower, there was another event happening today. Look, they're coming. With growing murmurs, a long procession approached in the distance. A line of condemned men, bound like prisoners. Those are Noarch's disgusting dogs. Damn them. Die, die. The crowd cursed them as the Noarchians were escorted by soldiers down the main avenue. This was the final entry method decided upon between the royal family of Raftinia and Noarch. Because of you, I lost my home and my entire family. Die. Officially, Noarch lost the war. They surrendered completely and were now on their way to the capital to face trial. And then, they will receive a sentence of forced labor in service of the country. The citizens cheered as they watched those condemned men being dragged away like criminals, but I knew it was all part of a very well-planned script. Perhaps that's why. Maori. It seemed no coincidence when a man emerged from the crowd and stormed the procession. Puik. The dagger lodged itself in the abdomen of a bound Noarchian. But perhaps it was the first time the attacker had actually stabbed someone. Ah, the wounded man remained motionless. The one who stabbed him, however, froze, dropped the weapon, and recoiled in shock, as if thinking, what have I done? The wounded Noarchian walked slowly towards him. Kaya, even handcuffed, his physique was so imposing that he seemed capable of easily killing several men. The audience recoiled, imagining the worst, but nothing of the sort happened. Thud. The Noarchian, with his stern face, showed no anger toward the man who had wounded him. He did not protest the injustice. He simply knelt on the ground and let the tears fall without stopping. I'm sorry, ellipsis. I just wanted to live. I was born in that filthy hole, they told me to fight. He was crying like a child, and the assailant, stunned, could only manage to ask his age. 17. I'm 17 years old. 17. At that size. Hard to believe, but looking closely, there were still youthful features. The same age as my son. I'm sorry, how can someone so young? The man couldn't continue when he saw the countless scars etched onto that enormous body. In Raffinia, someone of that age couldn't even enter the labyrinth. But in Newark, that was routine. In a city that had completely abandoned laws and institutions and only recognized strength, who cared about age? I'm sorry, I just wanted to live. I'm sorry for what I caused. The Newarkian pressed his forehead to the filthy ground, weeping and begging for forgiveness, and the man simply couldn't do anything more. Soon, the watching soldiers immobilized his arms and confiscated his weapon. And then, clack, clack, the reporters captured the moment with their magic instruments. Chapter 867, Influx 2/5. After the procession of the chained Newarkians, what happened next was simple. The newspapers competed to get headlines. During escort, Newarkians attacked, child cries and begs for forgiveness. I just wanted to live, a tearful confession. The protagonist of the first trial of war criminals in Newark is a 16-year-old girl. Death sentence in the first instance, but, acknowledging guilt, there will be no appeal. Exclusive interview, about being born in Newark. Beginning with the incident at the Magic Tower Square and following the subsequent administrative timeline, related news poured in non-stop. Every morning I gathered and read each one, and so they piled up like a mountain on the first floor. Feeling the need to organize, I was arranging everything in chronological order when Tisk, a catchy title immediately caught the eye. The royal family finally speaks out. The labyrinth portal was opened 2 months ago, but dimensional collapse led to its annihilation. It was news from 3 weeks ago. The royal family of Raffinia revealed for the first time the exact details of what had happened. My name being engraved on the stone of honor had already made it public that the portal had been opened by the royal family, but this was the first time the full details were released to the public. The total number of magic stones has dropped by 80% compared to the previous year. Is the end truly near? The lineage of high-level adventurers has dried up. End of another golden generation. The fall of the giants. Most of the Anabata clan did not return alive. Inflation hits a historic record, 1.7 times higher than during the revolt of the Iron Walls. After the dimensional collapse event became public, the pattern of fear-mongering truly began. Newspapers, seemingly ignoring the royal family's perspective, daily reinforced the idea of a national crisis, and thus the end-of-the-world theory gained traction among citizens, increasing collective panic. And when this fear reached its peak, shocking statement by Count Erdayang. Executing Newarkians is a national waste. They should be condemned to forced labor in the labyrinth to extract magic stones. This was the first time this topic came up. Marquis Emperors. That's absurd. To comfort the citizens who lost their families, they must all beheaded. Someone stood up shouting that it was absolutely unacceptable. The citizens' song echoes in the square. The organizer of the event says that Newarkians also share the same roots as us and deserve a chance at redemption. And someone fully supported the idea. It was truly hilarious to watch. A song of the citizens. A peaceful demonstration singing in the square. The mere fact that this is possible is already a comedy. The original Raffinia would not tolerate something like this. They would react immediately, and if necessary, use force to disperse any gathering. But look at the photos in the newspaper. Soldiers lined up alongside the demonstrators just watching without doing anything. It's really happening exactly as those men said. A suffocating feeling already gripped my chest, but I didn't feel like calling the deceived citizens savages or anything like that. It's not their fault. In fact, it's almost natural. Besides, modern people aren't very different. Still, the bitter taste in my mouth was inevitable. Now I finally understood why all dictators start by controlling the press. The media is the gateway to persuasion. When political power makes decisions unilaterally, the press talks non-stop to convince the citizens, and they remain powerless. In Raffinia, there isn't even such a thing as objective, international news. News that the royal family wants. Demonstrations that the royal family wants. Administrative orders that the royal family wants. Only these 3 things happened every day in Raffinia, and very few people knew that it was all a grand charade. While I was organizing the newspapers, my hand suddenly stopped. It was yesterday's paper. It had nothing to do with Newark or the royal family, and it wasn't even a headline, it was discreetly on the second page. Last month, the number of executions of evil spirits rose for the first time in 3 years. Probably nothing special, right? The campfire flickered in the forest clearing. I watched the young barbarians lined up haphazardly and shouted, "Congratulations, young warriors." In Dungeon and Stone, when choosing the Barbarian class, this is the first process everyone goes through. The coming-of-age ceremony. Normally, here they would choose a weapon and be sent to the labyrinth. But, at least this time, that was impossible. The labyrinth had not yet been opened. From today onward, you will find your own weapon and be reborn as true warriors. Therefore, I proceeded with the event using a slightly modified version of my usual speech. After all, we can't just skip the coming-of-age ceremony just because they can't go to the labyrinth, right? Now, come forward one at a time and choose the weapon that suits you best. And, of course, leather boots would be distributed as standard equipment. A revolution that arose after I became chief of the tribe. Before, in addition to the boots, we also gave out 2 potions, but I've set that aside for now. Nobody would enter the labyrinth now, and if I gave them out beforehand, someone would surely use them foolishly. It was more rational to give out the potions only when the labyrinth was opened. Bahallah, as soon as the ceremony began, the young warriors let out a unanimous shout. Actually, it was a tradition I created. When I first distributed leather boots and 2 potions, the excited shouts seemed like a great way to identify any infiltrating evil spirits. Ellipsis ? While everyone was shouting, I spotted a few here and there who looked dazed and confused, and I, pretending not to notice, concluded the coming-of-age ceremony as usual. For the first time, 4 evil spirits appeared in a single ceremony. Could something really be going on? That article in the newspaper seemed even more significant now. Recently, I had been leaving the ceremonies in the hands of Aner and Charon, but after that news, I decided to conduct them personally as a precaution. And then the number of people increased like that. I need to investigate, but finding out immediately would be a huge hassle. Yes, I could drag them somewhere and forcefully extract information, but in that case, I would have to silence them afterward. If it got around that the barbarian chief had left a possessed warrior alive, it would be a scandal. The best thing to do would be to bring them into the community and ask them there. But nobody knew when that would be possible. So, I went looking for the GM after a long time. Researchers need to be nudged regularly to produce results, after all. I left the tent and went to where he was. It didn't take even 15 minutes. He practically lived in the sacred barbarian land now. Oh, you came. So, nothing new today. Ha ha, yeah, no progress. I gave him a silent, pressured look as he offered an awkward smile, pulled up a chair, and sat down. So, what brings you here today? Are you settling in well here? I have nothing to complain about. In any case, I can't really leave. Actually, setting up a makeshift laboratory here was his choice. With the state of emergency at the magic tower because of the origin fragment, he said he'd be afraid to take the item there. He asked for a place to research in secrecy, saying that the barbarian Holy Land was the safest location. So I arranged for one of the empty houses. It was an isolated region where there were almost no barbarians, since construction had been interrupted by the economic crisis. So, to what do I owe the visit? Tisk, do I seem like someone who only shows up when they need something? I took one of the newspapers I had already set aside from my pocket and threw it on the table in front of him. And then, last month, the number of executions of evil spirits rose for the first time in 3 years. Upon seeing the circled item, he startled slightly. Why are you showing me this? I thought you might know something. Ellipsis. Oh, you really know. Judging by your expression, it seems you have some idea, doesn't it? I asked, trying to probe him, and he remained silent for a moment, as if organizing his thoughts, before finally speaking. Before I answer, may I ask a question? Viscount Hyandial, how do you intend to use the spiritual space created from the fragment of origin? He just came up with that out of nowhere. Since he'd never brought it up before, I'd let it go until now too. I intended to use it as is. To gather the evil spirits and observe them. Simply out of curiosity, of course. I shook my head and presented the logical reason why I couldn't help but be interested in Ghostbusters. The royal family, Noark, the magic tower, the nobility, there are countless powers in this world. The only reason the evil spirits haven't united is because they haven't been able to gather externally. But I believe they are a force with enormous potential. Do you intend to control them? To some extent, it would be good to have a faction that supports me. There's no guarantee they'll be unconditionally loyal to you, Lord Viscount. She smiled briefly. Haven't you seen what the city has been like lately? With those words, the GM immediately shut his mouth. He seemed to understand exactly what I meant. But perhaps he still had a lingering doubt. Is that really the only reason? I pretended to hesitate a little and answered carefully, as if I were revealing a secret. In fact, I had decided that I would speak up to that point. There is an evil spirit in the Anabata clan, and I intend to use the spiritual realm to try to make contact with it. Are you satisfied now? He finally seemed to fully understand my motivation and nodded with relief. It was clear he'd been brooding over it alone for some time. Okay, now it's your turn to answer. Ellipsis. That makes it difficult. When I rolled my shoulders as if to stretch my body, the GM panicked and quickly said. It's not that I didn't want to answer. I was just thinking about how to explain it. Just speak. I'll understand in my own way. If that's the case, in fact, cases of evil spirits have increased quite a bit recently. I let out a slow sigh. Huh, so those 4 at once weren't a coincidence. Can you tell me the reason? Good. His explanation was lengthy. He tried to translate modern-day terms into concepts from this world so that I could understand. Things like evil spirits gathering offline after the Ghostbusters show shut down, supposedly rescuing one of them about to be executed, and all this information emerging from that process. I decided to hear about those circumstances in detail later. For now, from my perspective, the last sentence was sufficient. They say that, with the sudden disappearance of people becoming a global issue, everyone is starting to play that game. What the hell? Why on earth would people play a game where they could disappear? It seemed like I could already hear the desperate cries of the newcomers trapped in a game doomed to disaster. Chapter 868, Influx 3/5. Surviving in the game as a barbarian. Were they crazy? At first, that was the feeling, astonishment and disbelief. But, thinking about it more, it wasn't such a difficult phenomenon to understand. Let's face it, a game that makes people disappear. It's an urban legend interesting enough to pique curiosity. No, actually, it's not even just a legend. It's something that's really happening. With the rumors spreading, it was natural that the number of newcomers would explode. The problem is, we can't look at this in such a simplistic way. Why hadn't any of this happened until now? Even though time on Earth runs much slower than here, almost 20 years had passed since the first evil spirit from Earth appeared in this world. And yet, no one even suspected that the game had any connection to disappearances. There wasn't even a similar rumor. In short, someone was blocking this information on purpose. But then, suddenly, the information spread. Is it really a coincidence? Of course, that's a possibility. Perhaps someone was nearby when they finished the game, and the reports started circulating. Or maybe someone investigated the disappearances relentlessly. Both hypotheses are plausible. After all, the very reason Hyandial started the game was my disappearance. Although, something here doesn't smell right to me. To begin with, who the hell created the hacked version? Could an ordinary civilian, just by tinkering with the code, transform a game into something that automatically throws someone into another world upon completion? I highly doubt it. It's far more convincing to think that the same scoundrels who threw us into this decided to change their minds and distribute the cheat. So, is this influx of newcomers coming in now also their doing? For now, this seems to be the most likely possibility. But I can't understand their intentions at all. Did they decide to resort to a brute force approach with numbers because the Abyss Gate showed no signs of opening, no matter how many people they sent? How am I supposed to know what's going on in those bastards' heads? Nothing. I was just talking to myself. Finally, listening to the GM, I learned several very unfortunate things. With the urban legend spreading, more and more people started playing. And the hacked version was altered, even creating a difficulty mode 300 times higher. And now anyone without any prior knowledge can beat it on their first try and is dragged here without even knowing. How? Damn, I can even picture the future of the newcomers being crushed the moment the labyrinth opens. I, who already had experience, almost met my end stepping into a trap. Ellipsis. My heart was heavy. Is there nothing I can do? It would be a waste to just let them die. I'll have to think seriously about that. Chief of an entire race. Viscount of Raftinia, of the Anabata clan. No, let's leave that aside for now. Anyway, I don't like just standing there watching. After all, I am no longer the naked barbarian with a single shield to defend myself. After that, time flew by. If I were to organize everything that happened in the meantime, there were a whole lot of events. I attended a meeting of the royal family, and I also went to the races meeting. You lied, didn't you? About the purebloods. The chief of the elven race, whom I met at the racial assembly, didn't even blink at my sideways glance and obvious discomfort. He simply ignored me. Everyone should know, since they received the official statement from the royal family. Tisk, if they send a coercive document like that, what do they expect us to do? Supporting the arming of young people who will become adventurers, I can understand that. But how do they intend to create 3,000 new adventurers out of thin air? Speak up. If you represent humanity, have the decency to say something. Well, Raftinia is facing a serious national crisis right now, so we need to join forces. The meeting ended up becoming nothing more than a firing range where they vented their frustration against the royals, and, in the end, the statement sent by the royal family was not revoked. And so the meeting concluded. It finally came. Has it made its decision? Half of it, for now. Half, that is. Armin appeared soon after, bringing a condition regarding the recruitment proposal. I couldn't convince everyone to join us down to the first basement level, but they agreed to explore the labyrinth with us for now. They said they want to be more cautious when it comes to the first basement level. I can't give a definitive answer, but even if we can't go to the first basement together, until then we intend to fully support your lordship and follow your orders. What do you think? What do I think? Simple. Let's do it. I accepted without hesitation. There was nothing to lose. We weren't going down to the first basement level now anyway. It was better to form the group first. After that, recruiting new members would be much easier. Then I'll be going. Yes, proceed with caution. After meeting Armin, I stopped going out to recruit members, but I still kept quite busy. Checking the news daily was the bare minimum. In addition, I frequently visited the sanctuary to accompany the young warriors who would make the first foray into the labyrinth as soon as it opened. Well, actually, I only showed up occasionally to give speeches and train their minds. The real training was left to Aner and Charon. Baha'u'llah, break Han's head open the moment you see him. And there was another special obligation, should it arise. That damned guild master, he insisted so much that I ended up arranging a few days to campaign alongside him. My name is now inscribed on the Stone of Honor. The heroic story of saving countless adventurers during the dimensional collapse, added to the fact that the number of high-level adventurers has recently plummeted. All these factors combined worked, and the guild master, after publicly receiving my support, managed to avoid being fired and kept his position. Apparently, the guild members came to believe I was their supporter, and I didn't bother to deny it. After all, that was the agreement from the beginning, and... yes, here it is. If you're finished talking, let go of my hand right now. As long as I get what's due to me, that's all that matters. Besides, having the head of a gigantic organization like the Adventurers Guild under my influence was also a good thing. After receiving the dragon heart, I immediately went to the sacred land and revived the shaman. Is revive the right word for it? According to the young shaman, who even shed tears wanting to save his master, it would take time for him to regain consciousness. When the shaman awakens, I can continue inscribing the marks. Although I hadn't yet gathered the materials, I would do so little by little. Since I left that room, everything seemed to be progressing smoothly, and I felt my motivation blossoming. Proceeding without greed, step by step, one day I will reach the first basement. And the Ghostbusters project is also progressing in some way. The GM's research finally yielded results, and the first test was completed a few days ago. Although the community was empty, just me and the GM. He said that transferring the server that existing players used would require more research, or something like that. He didn't seem very confident when he said that, so I was a little doubtful, but not too worried. If it can't be done, we'll just have to manage. Anyway, chalk. I leafed through the newspaper before starting my day's agenda. If the recollections up to now were about how I spent my previous days, then everything about how the outside world had changed was contained in these newspapers. About how the Raftanian royal family finally suspended the executions of Noark's citizens due to citizen opposition. Regarding how prices have skyrocketed again, as if someone had manipulated them, increasing anxiety across the country. Regarding how, at the current consumption rate, mana stone reserves would be depleted within a few months, accompanied by professional statistics that would normally never make it into an article. The news was all stressful just to read, but I couldn't simply shut my ears to it, so I read the newspaper every day without fail. But, of course, they're ruining the mood first thing in the morning. The day's headline also made me frown as soon as I saw it. Chaotic times, adventurer registration rate hits record high. Young heroes on the rise. Emergency of heroes, my ass. Currently, the entire city was creating an atmosphere where those who refused to enter the labyrinth were treated as the biggest cowards in the world. No, it was getting to the point where they were being treated like traitors. All of this was because of the machinations of the royal family. A retired adventurer decides to return to the labyrinth. His family is worried, but supportive. Young people complain. We want to become adventurers as soon as possible to help. With returning veterans and children who haven't even reached adulthood saying they want to enter the labyrinth as soon as possible, how could we not create this atmosphere? Anyway, it will appear soon. In fact, I already knew exactly what the next news would be. After setting the tone like that, what would come next was obvious. They would say they intended to use Noark as adventurers. And then they would demand that they live confined in Bifron. And they would present a series of legal devices to contain them, trying to stifle public fear and outrage. Tisk. I closed the newspaper and tossed it aside. The instant I stood up to get ready, Misha ran up to me. Where are you going today, Naya? To the palace. Why there? There's no meeting of the Royal Council today, is there? My request for a hearing has finally been accepted. A hearing. Misha was startled, but since there wasn't much time before my appointment, I left home without giving a detailed explanation. And then, the immortal palace located in the center of the 12 palaces. No, the palace of the New World. Well, perhaps the distinction is meaningless. If Marquis Tersarian's words are true, these two may be the same person. Oh, and just so you know, I didn't get to see the face of the king of the New World as I had hoped. It's been a while. Where is the king of the New World? Shouldn't you be a little more careful with your words? When I glanced at her to tell her not to make pointless remarks, Astaroth, who had come to greet me, smiled and led me inside. And once again, I had to ask, where is the king of the New World? He is sleeping, exhausted from dealing with matters of state. Exhausted from dealing with matters of state, my ass. He's probably inside that strange mechanical device, trying to hold on to what little life he has left. Judging by the looks of it, he hasn't left it even once since then. If that's the case, why did you accept my request for a hearing? I couldn't help the hint of irritation that crept into my voice. I naturally thought it would take time to wake him up or something, so I waited patiently until now. But all I see is this guy's face. Believe it or not, His Majesty the King has delegated considerable authority to me. Honestly, to be frank, I probably know more and can do more than the current Prime Minister, wouldn't you say? So you're saying that if I have something to say, I should say it to you? Astaroth shrugged, as if to say, obviously, and then, without further complaints, I got straight to the point. Give me the Secret Security Department. Oh, was that too straightforward? Ellipsis question mark. Seeing the look of utter incomprehension on her face, I gently added an explanation. I've decided I want to become a hunter of evil spirits. He's a smart guy, so that should be enough for him to understand. What am I saying? Chapter 869. Influx 4/5. Secret Security Department. A state institution directly subordinate to the royal family of Raftania. Although, nowadays, its influence is greatly reduced. The luster of its former glory had long since faded. Infiltration, espionage, and covert operations were separated and passed on to the Order of the Rose, and investigative authority over the nobles was transferred when Moslin emerged. Currently, its main function is practically to locate and execute evil spirits. Perhaps that's why the name ends with department, and not agency. In its heyday, it was called the Secret Security Agency. When the era of the New World King began, everything was reshaped. That was one of the reasons why I felt a little lost when I arrived in this world. More than 150 years have passed since the time in which Dungeon & Stone takes place, and there are countless differences compared to what I knew. For example, the Order of the Rose. In the game, there wasn't even a group with that name. The Secret Department of Security, Astaroth murmured this, as if she were organizing her thoughts while looking at me. You're probably not talking about actually hunting and killing evil spirits. Are you thinking of gathering them and forming some kind of group of your own? As expected of a clever fellow, he grasped my intention immediately. Although I needed to correct a small misunderstanding. I don't intend to form a particular group. I was direct and completely honest. I'm just a little frustrated, that's all. If they accept even Noark because they're short of magic stones, then why not accept evil spirits? Ellipsis. Especially considering that Noark is infested with evil spirits. Suppressing evil spirits at this point is not only useless, it's practically wasted effort. I can't deny it. Surprisingly, Astaroth nodded instead of reacting aggressively. Of course, this didn't mean he was willing to give in. From what I see, in the end you want to reinstate the policy of including evil spirits that was discarded in the past. Forget it. It's impossible. Why? His Majesty does not wish their civilization to contaminate this world. Astaroth was categorical, and it wasn't difficult to understand what he meant. Democracy, revolution, religion, modern technology. For those who govern this city, the modern mentality of people like us would never be welcome. And to think that this hypocrite creates elevators, board games, and all sorts of modern junk. In any case, I understood the meaning perfectly. In fact, I was already expecting to receive exactly that kind of response. That's why I was also ready to give mine. That's precisely why I need to take over the Secret Security Department. Of course, I didn't expect you to give up so easily. So tell me, what's the reason? Because I can control and prevent in advance everything you fear. And if anyone decides to disobey me and messes up, I just need to put that person on the guillotine. Well, that would be possible, in fact. But, from our point of view, we are already handling the situation well. There is no reason to allow an unnecessary risk. Astaroth didn't waste time discussing the feasibility of my plan, he went straight to the heart of the matter. So tell me, why should we grant your request? Neither Astaroth nor the King of the New World were my parents, to simply give me whatever I wanted because I threw a tantrum. But that didn't worry me. Luckily, I had a free pass. His Majesty must have said this before falling asleep. To attend to everything I demand from now on, and to cooperate with me. Astaroth grimaced, as if that phrase were an abuse of interpretation. This was during the mission to assassinate the former Prime Minister, in the midst of war. Oh, so you mean His Majesty woke up in the middle of the process and repeated that to you? My comment was mocking enough for anyone to notice, but he didn't respond. Silence. And that was already an answer. What? If he never said anything like that, were you trying to interpret His Majesty's thoughts on your own and distort the orders? Ellipsis. Once again, Astaroth chose silence. It was time to deliver the final blow. That day, when I came here, the King of the New World said he would grant me 5 requests. The first request, the Prime Minister, had already been fulfilled. 4 remained, and until now, no new request had been given to me. But one thing was certain. And what exactly are you trying to say by that? Wow, so excited. The King of the New World clearly has something he wants from me. And he has decided to fully support me in this endeavor. Therefore, you should also cooperate with me. Haha, even without knowing what the next command will be. It's not a command, but a request. I would appreciate it if you paid attention to the wording. Or are you planning to arbitrarily interpret His Majesty's words this time as well? After a long silence, Astaroth finally replied, I'll think about it, which, in practice, was equivalent to a permit. It wasn't a confirmation yet, but the resistance was much weaker than I had anticipated. I haven't even mentioned all the advantages that would arise if he granted my request. This only made me more puzzled. That guy has absolute loyalty to the royal family buried in his head, but even so, it was too easy. Anyone who has dealt with the royal family a few times knows how to interpret this correctly. They're plotting something else. Actually, this paranoia has only gotten worse lately. It's like everything is strange. Like, from the moment I woke up in this world until now, I've been playing in someone else's palm the whole time. This feeling has gotten worse recently. But that wasn't something to think about right now. Oh, and so, what was that all about? If you talk like that, how do you expect me to know what you're talking about? I asked one last question that intrigued me before leaving. Why on earth did you summon the Lord of Tears? The very question to which I couldn't get an answer, no matter how many times I asked the current Prime Minister or the various influential nobles with whom I had connections. But I thought that perhaps Astaroth could be different. Ellipsis. But, of course, my expectation was dashed. Again, he simply shut up. So I had to be more direct. The goal was to see if more people would die, is that it? I have no idea what's going on. The dimensional collapse. I interrupted him, and while I took a moment to catch my breath, I kept my gaze fixed on his eyes. You guys were the ones who blew that thing up, weren't you? I asked, trying my best to contain my emotions. He didn't react, not a single change in expression. Tisk. I wanted to at least try to read something on his face and he laughed, suddenly, without warning, and then, and if it had been, what would have changed? He asked in a mocking tone. But, it didn't seem like a mockery directed only at me. It seemed like he was mocking something much bigger. Go away for today. Regarding the Secret Security Department, I'll give you an answer after I've thought about it. Astaroth ended the conversation abruptly. That was all for now. Then I asked if I could see Ragna and Hyandial before leaving, and he told me to do as I pleased. So I went there. Nothing had changed since my last visit. Ragna was still unconscious. You said you would always come. Hyandial had a sour, sulky expression. I had to spend a good amount of time calming her down and cheering her up. And then, did something happen while I was away? The incidents weren't on your side, Oppa. There's been a lot of talk lately about the dimensional collapse and what else. I thought you'd been here the whole time. Basically, yes, basically, you're saying. When I asked why I didn't understand what she meant, Hyandial gave me a brief explanation. She had grown bored of being confined to this room, so she wandered around the palace and gradually made acquaintances, apparently. Starting with the maid who brought her meals, then the gardener, and even the head chef. Apparently, the knights didn't particularly try to stop her activities, and recently, it seems that even some of the knights have begun to reciprocate her greetings. You're not doing this just because you were bored, are you? Of course not. I also need to have at least a basic understanding of how the world outside is working, don't you think? I knew it. Hyandial is the type that would survive well anywhere she was thrown. So tell me, anything will do. The people I've become close to here always end up having some kind of limit, you know. They filter what they say. After that, I told Hyandial, who said she was almost going crazy with boredom, everything that had happened to me. The Lord of the Floor. The dimensional collapse. Perhaps because of the sensational topics that couldn't possibly be boring, Hyandial listened with great interest. Maybe that's why, suddenly, that little dragon in the gnome tree came to mind. She also always begged me to tell her stories whenever I visited her, and I listened with intense concentration all day. Anyway, that's it. Even if I wanted to continue, I have nothing more to say. So, time passed within the story until the moment I entered that room. But, for some reason, Hyandial didn't seem happy, even though it was the first time in a long time that he had heard something new. You've been through a lot. And it was very intense too. Knowing you, getting out of that room must have been nearly impossible. Yes, she was the only one who knew. Not the strong and unbeatable barbarian, Bjorn Hyandial, but the weak and ordinary Korean, Lee Hansu. I felt strange. The more still I was, the more I reasoned, the more it seemed like something was going to spill out of me. So I cleared my throat and changed the subject. Cough. And you, do you intend to continue living like this? For now, yes. The answer came without a single second of hesitation. After thinking for a while, I asked directly, why are you doing all this? The question carried multiple meanings. Perhaps that's why the answer was also loaded with meaning. Well, I think I've changed too. As much as you have, Oppa. Ever since I came into this world. I understand. I nodded without saying anything. I already had a suspicion. I was also the only person in this world who knew Kong Hyandial, the Korean woman who existed before all this. Maybe she saw a bit of the old me when she looked at me. But to act like this, with such loyalty, that meant she had really changed a lot. So, about the Department of Homeland Security. From what I've heard from what you've told me, I think it's almost certain they'll accept. And then what? What do you intend to do? I explained all my plans to Hyandial, leaving nothing out. She, who had already worked in public institutions on Earth, corrected several details that I had missed. Perhaps because of this, a question arose for her. But, Oppa, do you really think you can do all this by yourself? No, I don't think so. So how are you going to do it? Now I'll have to find someone. But don't worry, there's someone who can probably do this much better than I can. Oh, that's great that you already have a candidate. Who is it? Hyandial asked, full of curiosity. I just looked at her in silence. Ellipsis ? So, what are you pretending not to know? After you were the one who offered all that temptation in the first place. Chapter 870. Influx 5/5. To summarize the outcome, I didn't get Hyandial's approval. She said she wanted, at least, to protect this place until Ragna woke up. Therefore, I only said a few persuasive words and left. After all, insisting any longer there would have an adverse effect. What would she do after Ragna opened his eyes? If she gathered the evil spirits into a group, she would gain a small faction. Ragna wanted to perform the embodiment of evil spirits, and so on. The fact that she hadn't vehemently refuted my persuasion already meant that, in reality, she was practically half convinced. Therefore, that part was something I could leave for the future. You're going out today too, Naya. The next day, I also started my schedule by leaving home early in the morning. However, it wasn't an appointment I had originally planned. Where are you going this time? Gnome Tree. Why go there suddenly? It's just that something suddenly occurred to me. It was a somewhat impulsive decision. While talking to Hyandial, who was locked in her room, I ended up remembering the dragon brat. Well, that wasn't the only reason I was dedicating an entire day to going to Gnome Tree. DRRR. I took the military teleporter, went to Gnome Tree in an instant, and then traveled by carriage to the sacred land of dragons. Welcome, Baron Hyandial. The guard at the sanctuary gate was quite familiar. Come to think of it, it seemed like it was always the same man every time I came. Isn't there even a shift system here? I found that quite barbaric, but since I couldn't interfere in the internal well-being of another race, I didn't say anything. Oh, of course, but I had to mention one thing. Now I am a Viscount. Oh, really? I apologize for being rude. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? Did the news take a long time to get around? I don't pay much attention to worldly affairs. If it's something I need to hear, sooner or later it will reach my ears. Those were words that, somehow, sounded like an epiphany, but I decided not to absorb them. If it was something I wanted to seriously consider, sooner or later I would. There's no need to rush, right? Is the tribe chief inside? The ancient dragon is already waiting for you. Oh, how did the tribe chief know I was coming? Inside the Gnome Tree, there is nothing that the dragon ancestor does not know. Really? So maybe he also knows about the first time I met Beko Lee here, a long time ago. How fascinating. I didn't know the tribe's chief possessed such an ability. If you're so curious, go find him and ask. The ancient dragon is waiting for you. Frankly, he insists on emphasizing, dragon ancestor. Why does each race have a different name for its tribal chief? It would be easier and more intuitive to simply use, tribal chief, avoiding any chance of confusion. You finally arrived. I got out of the carriage, climbed the steep walkway for quite a while, and as soon as I arrived at the Dragon Temple, I was able to meet the chief of the Dragon Men tribe, Mr. Dragon. Your tone indicates that you were expecting me, doesn't it? Of course, I was the one who asked him to come visit me anytime during the last race meeting. He pretends not to, but Pen is really eager to see him. Oh, that's right, I had forgotten, but seeing him talk about this sort of thing, it seems like you came for another reason, doesn't it? Tell me, to begin with. I'm also curious to know the reason for your visit. Mr. Dragon expressed more curiosity than annoyance, which allowed me to present my subject with a bit more peace of mind. I want to receive another dragon blessing. Getting stronger is always the right thing to do. The Dragon's Blessing. This was the race's exclusive secret art, like the Barbarians, Spirit Mark or the Tarian's Soul Beast. In the past, in exchange for returning the Dragon Slayer's sword to their tribe, I received the Earth Dragon's Blessing, something never granted to outsiders. The trace of it was still carefully hidden beneath the sole of my foot. In any case, that wasn't what mattered. Back then, the little dragon girl pen warned me, almost as a warning, after finishing the blessing. If you're thinking about it, choosing multiple blessings isn't allowed. Your body won't be able to handle it, especially if you're a barbarian. I, being a barbarian, couldn't bear it. Even among the dragon race, the overload was so intense that, with the exception of Mr. Dragon, few had engraved 2 or more blessings. Convinced by the sincere warning, I succumbed to greed. But, another blessing, you say. Now, the situation had changed somewhat. I had consumed the essence of tears and become virtually immortal. I could easily endure even 2 or 3 blessings. Well, the pain would be much worse than before, of course. I don't know what idea came over you, but it seems like you suddenly had a strange thought. Mr. Dragon put his hand to his forehead, as if he already had a headache. Don't give me that story about my body not being able to handle it. The me of today is a completely different person from the one I was back then. I can't deny that part. But this is a completely different story. Try to convince me. I don't know why I should bother convincing you. I was thinking of activating brainless barbarian mode, but Mr. Dragon continued. I'm telling you this to avoid causing further problems if I simply refuse. Does this guy read minds too? I wasn't sure, but Mr. Dragon spoke as if he were scolding a spoiled child. The blessing does not impose a burden only on the physical body. The real problem lies in the mind. No, to be more precise, it falls upon the spirit. Spirit, keep listening. I found the subject somewhat unexpected, but I pursed my lips at Mr. Dragon's expression, which told me not to interrupt. The physical body is the vessel that contains the spirit. And no matter how hard and resilient you become, it's impossible to increase the total capacity of that vessel. Oh, and are dragons different? We are different, Mr. Dragon responded seriously to my sarcastic comment. I don't say this to imply that we are a superior race, but simply to point out a racial difference. After all, it's a fact that we've been given an unimaginably long time, something other races can't have. Ellipsis. Think about it. The day a barbarian born today dies of old age after a peaceful life, I will still be exactly as I am now. I understand what he was trying to say. However, one thing intrigued me. So, does that mean that no matter how much my spiritual level increases, it's the same thing? I wondered if the concept of vessel of the spirit, mentioned by the dragon man had any relation to the level. Mr. Dragon's answer was immediate. It's the same thing. Even if the muddy water in the container becomes cleaner and purer, the container itself doesn't get bigger. Ellipsis. Therefore, abandon greed, for it may be that your spirit suffers a permanent deficiency. I have in my old records stories of how most humans who received a second blessing became idiots. So, that's it. I clicked my tongue, but asked pointedly. But what if, despite all that, I say that I need to receive it? In that case, I would say the following. Then Mr. Dragon, sitting on the throne, looked at me. First of all, why should we grant your request? You didn't bring us the Dragon Slayer's sword this time, did you? Well, last time if you're referring to the execution of the Dragon Slayer and the recovery of the heart, I can annul the agreement made back then and do what you want. Would you do that? Ellipsis. I couldn't answer. After all, the agreement that Mr. Dragon was now referring to was the pact. In exchange for the Dragon Slayer's heart, I received the promise of support from the dragon race. Although there was the condition that the king should not be involved. I said I would consider it if the situation allowed me to confront the king. It wasn't a promise worth breaking just to receive another blessing. Mr. Dragon knew this, and that's why he was offering to cancel the existing agreement and make a new one, if I wanted. This was something I couldn't, under any circumstances, cancel. Therefore, okay, the dragon's blessing is completely out of the question. I let go of all greed. After all, it was a dangerous choice that could have made me an idiot. It wasn't worth risking everything for. However, perhaps my quick and selfless abandonment was unexpected. You gave in faster than I thought. And you don't seem to intend to play the stubborn one. To be honest, I was just testing the waters. I shrugged jokingly, but Mr. Dragon's expression was strangely serious. Is this idea still valid? What are you talking about? From the royal family. I realized that Mr. Dragon had interpreted my submission, right after the mention of the pact, in a different way. Of course, I didn't intend to correct him. After all, it wasn't exactly a misunderstanding. What can I do? I sincerely hope that situation never comes to pass, but one must be prepared. If the time comes to fight, I will have no choice but to fight. Mr. Dragon's expression upon hearing my words was peculiar. I couldn't figure out what he was thinking, and he ended up not verbalizing his thoughts. A fascinating and enviable stance, indeed. With the subject of the dragon's blessing now concluded, my conversation with Mr. Dragon also ended there. Before you go, see Pen. You'll be surprised too. I'll see her, but there's someone else I'd like to see first. If you're talking about Ravi, the child is not in the Holy Land. Huh, oh, did I misinterpret it? No, that wasn't it. The person I wanted to see before the little dragon girl was Ravian, the fellow dragon who accompanied me on the expedition to the Frozen Rock. I was thinking of convincing her to come with me to the labyrinth, in case she wasn't doing anything. It's her. But what do you mean, she's not here? Do you know when she's coming back? I don't know, but don't get your hopes up too high. She hasn't returned since the last time you came to the Holy Land. What? Since that time? If you happen to have any news about her, please let me know later. I'm starting to get curious about what that child has been up to. That was absurd. Was he really a decent father? If she hadn't shown up for years, shouldn't he be worried and think she was missing? That thought occurred to me first, but it was a purely non-draconian mindset. For a dragon, this is just an extremely short period of time. In that case, like a barbarian, I had nothing more to say. Pen, the little dragon girl I met after the meeting with Mr. Dragon, was different in many ways from the last time I saw her. I don't know about her mental state, but at least her outward appearance had certainly changed. That way, we can't call her a little dragon brat anymore. She had grown quite a bit taller. Not to the point of being the size of an adult woman, but she was slightly taller than Raven. Why did it take you so long to come? You said you would come often. Her way of speaking was the same, but perhaps it was because her appearance had changed so much. Somehow, I felt more strangeness than joy in seeing her again. He, it seems you're surprised to see me, aren't you? I told you, just wait a little while and I'll look just like my big sister. Something wrong. Now you're regretting it. Regretful. It's too late. Liars have already been disqualified. I asked because I couldn't understand what she was saying, but the only answer I received was even more confusing. However, I decided not to think about it too much. Okay, so tell me your stories. My father gave me a summary, but hearing it from you is different. Who knows? If they're interesting stories, I might change my mind. You talk as if you've entrusted me with something. I was a little perplexed, but for the moment, I began to recount the adventures I had accumulated during that time. But what was happening? And then, what happened next? Although that little brat was listening and reacting to every part, I felt a dissonance. Quick, don't stall and tell me. This is the most fun part. For some reason, unlike before, her reaction seemed completely soulless. That way, it's going to be complicated. My periodic encounters with that brat were like a kind of community service. And she couldn't even react properly to such a kind person. Such a badly behaved child didn't deserve to hear my stories. Swish. At that moment, the little dragon girl suddenly placed something quickly in my hand. I looked and it was a scribbled note. Keep talking while you read. What is this? I was inclined to ask when the bratty dragon hurriedly wrote another note and handed it to me. Please save my big sister. The content was still incomprehensible. The big sister was supposed to be Ravian. It seems like my dad wants to kill my big sister. Upon confirming the contents of the next note, I froze. Seeing the tense and cautious expression on her face as she surveyed her surroundings, it seemed she was completely serious. That's why their reactions were soulless. I could understand why the little dragon girl wasn't focused on my story. However, my understanding stopped there. Does Mr. Dragon want to kill Ravian? What's this story all about?